Welcome to the first session of the modesty myth. We're going to talk about the myth of modesty laws for women as they are presented today and through the history of halakha. We're going to start with the Tanakh, with what people claim to be biblical sources, and then we're going to follow the order of a book that became the encyclopedia or the Bible of the halachot and attitudes of modesty. The book is called Oz V'Hadar Levusha, Modesty and Adornment for Life by Rabbi Pesach Eliyahu Falk. It says halachos and attitudes concerning tznius of dress and conduct. So we're going to go through the book. If you have the book, you could look up. I'm going to refer to pages, numbers. But we're going to start with the Tanakh. What do we have about modesty in the Tanakh? I want to highlight 3 verses that became the axis of the discussion of modesty. One is from the Torah, one from Levi'im, one from Ketuvim. And each one of them was taken completely out of context and has nothing to do with modesty. So the first verse is in Parashat Ki Tetzeh, chapter 23 of Devarim, of Deuteronomy, and it says, verse 15 of chapter 23, V'haya mahanecha kadosh v'lo yireh becha ervat davar v'shav maharecha. Your encampment should be holy. Make sure it is maintained that way, lest God find something unclean about you and will abandon you. Now the word unclean is written as nakedness, ervat davar. But erva is not necessarily nakedness in the Torah, or in the Tanakh. It means, could be uncleanliness or weakness. As when Yosef accuses his brothers of being spies, he says, "Lirot ervat haaretz batem." You came to see the nakedness of the land, meaning the weakness of the land. Now, this verse about the holy camp is used constantly in modesty campaigns, in advertisement, in posters that are being placed in ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods in Yerushalayim and in the United States. Those 3 words, V'haya mahanecha kadosh, let your camp be holy. The only problem is that in that context where the verse is mentioned, women are not present. This is purely in a military environment, and not only that, it does not speak about modesty in terms of nakedness or covering one's body, but rather it's about cleanliness. What is the context? Let's read the whole paragraph. When you go to a military campaign against your enemies, you must be careful that nothing bad will happen to you. And then there are 2 people here who are isolated. One who has an ejaculation, what is called a mikre laila, and he has an emission. He has to leave the camp and then come back only when he's pure, and that is because of the fear of sexually transmitted diseases that could spread and become contagious to other soldiers. And then in verse 13, the Torah says, you'll have to mark a place outside the camp, and with your military weapons, you have to carry also a shovel. And when you relieve yourself far away from the camp, you have to dig, relieve yourself, and then cover your excrement, whatever you left there. And why is that? Because now comes the pasuk about the holiness. Hashem walks among you to save you and to defeat your enemies in front of you, and therefore your camp should be holy. So nothing here about modesty. What is the reason behind this commandment of taking care of your cleanliness when in battle? It's purely a hygienic thing. There's nothing secret or sacred here, but the Torah presented in such a way to make sure that people would follow. If the Torah would have said you have to be clean, you have to be healthy, people tend to be somewhat lax about that. But when the Torah says this is a question of holiness, and if you don't do it, God will abandon you, then people pay more attention. And that could have been one of the secrets of success or survival of the Jewish people throughout the generations. They were more conscientious about that, washing hands at least, and going to the mikveh more regularly. So this is one thing, that idea of being clean. The other important message the Torah shares here is the importance of the dignity of the human body. When soldiers are in battle, they tend to neglect their bodily needs, cleanliness, etc. And when they don't treat themselves with respect, their respect for other humans is also eroded. So by insisting on respecting our body and the image of God that we have, the Torah also achieves a certain level of humanity and humane treatment towards others. However, this pasuk, this one verse in the Torah that is used as a source for the laws of modesty, actually has no basis. The next pasuk, the next verse, is also a very famous pasuk, very famous verse. It appeared at the end of the book of Micha, of Micah, chapter 6, verse 8. There the prophet says, Higid lecha adam ma tov, uma Adonai Elohecha doresh me'imach, ki ma'asot mishpat, ve'ahavat chesed, ve'atznei alechet im Elohecha. If one tells you, what is it that God wants? What is it that God asks of you? It is doing justice, loving kindness or loyalty, and being modest with God. So here again, people interpreted the word ve'atznei alechet as something that has to do with tzniut, with modesty. But the word tsanua in the Tanakh always means someone who is not arrogant. It has nothing to do, not modesty of garments, but rather modesty of behavior. And it is very appropriate here because what the Navi tells us is a manner of behavior, how to carry yourself. And this follows the question of this hypothetical person who asks the prophet, Bama akadem Adonai ikaf lelohem marom. How would I please God? Should I bring sacrifices, young calves? And the prophet answers, Hashem needs nothing of that. None of that is necessary. What Hashem wants is that you make sure that justice is maintained, but also loving kindness, you take care of people, and walk with God modestly, meaning don't wear religion on your sleeve. Don't tell everyone, look at me, I'm religious, I'm observant, I bring sacrifices, or even human sacrifices, as in the question before. So, not the verse from the Torah, nor the verse from Nevi'im really deal with modesty. Finally, the last verse, and one also which is used widely and is being taught in schools, in Bet Yaakov, in Midrasha, whenever girls learn and they are being taught about tzniut, this pasuk is mentioned, and that is Kol Kevoda Bat Melech Pnima, and it even became a phrase of two words, a maxim, Kol Kevoda. Then, and that is a quote from Tehillim. This is from the book of Tehillim, chapter 45, where the poet, the psalmist says, Kol kevuda bat melech penima, bimishbetzot zahav levusha. In verse 14, and it is translated by those who want to use it as a basis for the laws of modesty as the honor of the daughter of the king, the honor of the princess, her glory is to be indoors, and she is dressed in garments of gold. However, again, when we read this verse in context, we see that this is not the case, because this mizmor, this psalm, is a very poignant criticism of the king. It starts with praise for the king. It goes from verse 1 to verse 8, or actually to verse 9. It is a praise of the king. But then in verse 10, it says, Benot melachim bikerotecha nitzva shegal limincha bechetem ofir. The princesses surround you, and the concubine stands at your right, decked in gold. Now, the word used here for concubine is shegal, which is such a harsh word that in the few times it is mentioned in the Tanakh, other than here, it has been replaced with the system we know as kri and ktiv, meaning the verb is written as shagal, but the kri, the way we read it, is shachav, to sleep with, meaning that shagal is a more vulgar form to say sleeping with or having sexual relationship with. And shagal is a concubine. So from praise of the king to move into a description of the concubine, this is a little strange. So obviously what we see here is a poem that was written as if it were to praise the king, but then turns into a criticism of the king and of his opulent lifestyle and the wild parties that are going in the palace. Could be very well that it is a rebuke of King Solomon, of Shlomo HaMelech, which already appears in Shir HaShirim, also sort of a subliminal message or an allusion, and more clearly in Sefer Melachim, where it says, "Vayi le'ed ziknat Shlomo nashav itut levavo." As he grew older, his wife caused him to deviate into avodah zarah, into worshiping idols. The rabbis defended Shlomo by saying he didn't really worship idols; they did, and he did not stop them. So it is considered as if he did it. But the Tanakh says it's very clear that he did it. And even if we accept that midrashic interpretation to say that he let them do it, imagine someone who is not just a leader, is the king of Israel, in whose house and palace his wives worship idols freely. So that is not the image of a leader that one wants. We tend to forget that and associate only the wisdom of Shlomo with him. But here, it seems like the author of Tehillim did not forget it and rebuked him. And this is exactly what the verse speaks about. The verse we mentioned before about Kol Kevuda Bat Melech Pnima. It starts with this: Shim'i bat uri ve'ati oznech v'shechei amech u'bet avich. Listen, young girl, look, pay heed, forget your nation and the house of your father. So he's talking to a girl, a woman, who is being brought to the king. She is of a different nation. She's not Jewish or Hebrew or Israelite as it was at the time. He says, forget everything that you grew up with. And let the king desire your beauty, because he's your master and you bow down to him. Uvat Tzor, and the daughter of Tyre, of the Phoenician nation. And here's where we see the allusion to Shlomo, because Shlomo had dealings with the king of Tzor, with Hiram. And Uvat Tzor b'mincha panayich yichalu ashirei am, the daughter of Tyre, you will be offered gifts from the leaders of the nation, the rich people. Kol kevuda bat melech pnima. Now the word, it's not kevoda, as it is mispronounced by all those modesty campaigns, but rather kol kevuda bat melech pnima. It means all that she brought with her, all that she carries, as we still use in modern Hebrew the word kevuda for luggage or baggage. Mimishbetzot zav levusha, so she's decked in gold. It's a princess who's being brought to the king. Lirkamot tuva lamelech, she's brought to the king, covered with embroidered fabric. Betulot achareha re'otea muvaot lach, and with her other girls, virgins, are being brought to the king. Tuvalna bismachot vagil tevoena bechal melech, they were brought with triumphant joy into the palace. So obviously this whole mizmor is not one that speaks about modesty. No one would want to see his daughter, sister, wife, or any woman that we know in life in that situation, being brought to the king as an object, as a trophy. So the three verses, the three pillars upon which the idea of modesty is founded are really not there. One is V'haya Mahanecha Kadosh in Deuteronomy 23, which, as we saw, speaks about cleanliness and covering your bodily needs. The second in Micha 6:8, Hatznei Alecha Temelecha, walk modestly with God, speaks about your behavior and about not brandishing your religious observance in front of everyone. And the third from Tehillim, Kol Kevuda Bat Melech Perima, it does not speak about the glory of the daughter of the king who lives indoors, or the glory of the modest woman, but rather it's a criticism of a morally corrupt king. And with that, we just said the background for the discussion of the book, and with that, we're going to look at the book. Oz V'Hadar Levusha, modesty and adornment for life. So we'll start with the Haskamot, with the letters of recommendation by different rabbis, just to highlight certain elements that the rabbis speak about. In the letter written by Rabbi Steinberg, he says, "Ba'asher hu sefer piskei dinim, hineni nimna militen haskama lechol hanichtav." I don't necessarily agree with the halachot mentioned there, but all the other rabbis say it's extremely important to teach people the laws of tzniut. So now this book, we're talking about a book that is almost 700 pages long, a little bit actually more than 700 pages long. And that is a book that is meant to tell women how to dress. And think about that. How did people dress in the past? Where did they find those encyclopedias? That if you don't have those 700 pages book, you wouldn't know how to get dressed. So let us start with the book and see what it says. So in the introduction, on page 3, the author answers my question. He says this. On one hand, it's very joyous that we published this very, very important book that was published 25 years ago, the first time. It says, on the other hand, sadness is indicated by the very fact that a detailed sefer had to be written on this subject. In earlier times, there was no need for a sefer of this type. The word sefer, by the way, means book, but it's a holy book. So it already elevates this book into a level of a halachic work. In earlier times, there was no need of a sefer of this type because the Jewish woman and girl knew instinctively what was expected of her in terms of tznius and refinement. So, in the past, everybody knew exactly all the details of those 700 pages. In our times, however, the moral decay at every level of society and the relentless assault of the media on human decency and morality have unfortunately affected the attitude and sentiment of the Bas Yisrael, leaving her without proper direction. So this book comes to protect a woman, a girl, from the constant attack on her decency and morality. And this is a theme that we'll hear again and again throughout the book. And this is a concept that is being transmitted to students of Orthodox schools all over the world. Now, there is a certain level of behavior and manners that you could see that there is more emphasis on in religious schools. It's nothing to do with modesty. The modesty that's being imposed on people, that sometimes with fear, sometimes with guilt, with shame, has nothing to do with that. It turns out that a lot of people who teach in the Orthodox schools are more concerned, more aware about manners, about respect for each other, and there's also part of a traditional society where there's a great respect for the parents, for the elders, for scholars. But we should not confuse that with modesty. And also another thing that we have to have in mind, this fear of the outside society, and it's described in very harsh terms. This is relatively mild language. We'll see much worse language throughout the book. It comes to paint in very, very stark colors the distinction between us and them. Us, the observant, the orthodox, the modest people, we're pure, we're distinguished, we're special, we're modest, we behave with special refinement, and the rest of the world is crude, rude, vulgar, impure, unclean, etc., etc. So once that is instilled in someone's mind, they don't want to cross the line and go to the other side. He goes on to say, same page, 2 elementary causes for the downward spiral. It says that is even among those who have endeavored to avoid being influenced. By the way, high language, the pompous language throughout the book, just to make it sound important. But what he says here, that even people who are observant, who are frum, have been affected by that assault. Why is that? In this generation, there's a serious spiritual pollution in the air, resulting from the permissiveness and the misconduct of the world at large. That kind of language is very dangerous. To say that the world is polluted, this is the language of propaganda that labels others as sinners and as contaminated. Secondly, he says, regularly seeing the dress of Orthodox women who have been detrimentally influenced by the world around them, detrimentally influence the tmimus and tahara, the wholesomeness and purity of a girl. So even looking at an Orthodox woman, a girl looking at an Orthodox woman and seeing that she has been detrimentally influenced. Again, this negative language that we see throughout the book. Page 4. Mothers who are themselves perplexed or misguided in this fundamental aspect of Yiddishkeit, and they are therefore unable to give their daughters the right chinuch. So the mothers who teach their daughters and educate them in how to behave and how to dress are misguided, are perplexed, and are unable to give their daughters the right education. This is the exact opposite of everything Judaism teaches us. Shma beni musar avicha ve'al titosh torati micha. Do not abandon the Torah of your mother. Sha'al avicha ve'agidecha. Ask your father. Ve'avigadta lebincha. Tell your children. We always speak about how important it is that the parents would educate the children, but this has become the motto of the Orthodox society, and I actually heard it in the graduation of my daughter in Bes Yaakov of LA, when all of us parents were sitting there at the graduation, and the recurring theme was, we, the teachers, we are the true parents of your children, and you are just facilitators of food and lodging. And in the speech of the valedictorian of the class, it's exactly what she said. She said, thank you so much, our parents, for bringing us up, for giving us food, for giving us clothes, for driving us to school. Thank you, our teachers, for educating us, for showing us the light, for showing us the right path. So not only the outside society is contaminated, but even the parents are dysfunctional. They cannot educate their children and their daughters on what they have to do. Now, in the introduction, still, it would say this: before learning the halachot, it should be noted that in Torah law, the need for women to dress pleasantly and tastefully is fully recognized and even greatly encouraged. So now, remember that as we started this class, we started this discussion, I said that we have people rely on 3 major verses to say that modesty is needed. Here, it's simply mentioned as Torah law. What is Torah law? Where do you take it from? So the proof that he brings is concerning the duties of a husband to his wife, the rabbis say, "Ohavake gufo umchabda yoter migufo." He loves her as he loves his own body, his own self, and he respects her more than he respects himself. He honors her more than he honors himself. And then on that, he brings the commentary of the Rishonim, of the early commentators from medieval times, who say that honoring her refers to buying her fine clothes and jewelry. So as far as clothing is concerned, her needs take precedence over his, since her need for pleasant and tasteful clothes considerably exceeds his. That is I wouldn't even say a stretch of the imagination. It's a ridiculous argument to say that the Torah, first of all, he calls it Torah law, and it brings a midrashic statement from the Gemara that later on became halacha. But look at what it's not. Look at what he says. It's not from the Torah. It's a Talmudic statement. Ohava kegufo mechabda yoter kegufo. But what is that? Even the commentary that is that explains that saying is that one should buy his wife fine clothes and jewelry. Nothing about modesty. It's just that when you buy clothes which honor the person, first take care of your wife, then take care of yourself. So the proof for Torah law is not there. And by the way, I'll comment here that throughout the book there are references to a book of Mekorot, a book of sources. Many sources are presented in a clipped way, and we'll talk about it also, because really this is a myth that we must debunk and let people choose how they want to dress and how they want to advise their children to dress without that tremendous pressure and negative attitude towards the other. So the sources are clipped, and the book of sources that the author promised has never been published. And trust me, I went to different bookstores in Lakewood and Borough Park, and I searched for the book until one of the sellers himself told me, "I've been looking for this book for years. It does not exist." So there is a clear attempt of misleading people by giving them half sources, half truths, and saying, "Wait for the full truth to be published." Page 5. To our good fortune, modesty and refinement are an intrinsic part of being a Jewish woman or girl. Women have inherited these treasures from the original mothers of Klal Yisrael, the mothers of the nation. So a Jewish woman is naturally modest. So what he what he suggests by that is that if someone is immodest, she's not Jewish. That's another way of alienating people and saying that others are worthless. I wonder, what would he say to non-Jewish women who dress modestly, like the Amish or Muslim women or women all over the world? And actually, I don't have to wonder, because I've heard from someone, an Orthodox Jew, who marveled at the amazing modesty of other religions, regardless of the rest of their behavior. And actually said he wished that Jewish women would dress like Muslim women, with full coverage of their whole body, a burqa, hijab, a shador, whatever that is. And we've seen it recently in Israel. They're called Neshot HaShalim, the women of the shawls, cover themselves completely, which is their right, if they're entitled to do that, but they do it to their girls, the young daughters as well, which really is a very sad sight to see a group of people covered head to toe, only slits for the eyes, walking in the streets, adults and children. I don't think that those children have any choice, and I think that is abuse. Very, very clear and simple abuse. He refers to the lack of ability to dress modestly as a defect. Says there are then in page 7, there are a number of serious acts of pritzes, immodesty or promiscuity. There are a number of serious acts of pritzes which Gedolei HaPoskim of our times have condemned. The great leaders of the great authorities of halakha have condemned, but for which one can neither quote an explicit halakha nor a particular saying in Hazal. I'll read it again. There are acts, serious acts of immodesty, for which one can neither quote an explicit halakha nor a particular saying in Hazal. Nevertheless, to the person who has learned all the halachot and the numerous saying of Hazal, there will be absolutely no doubt that these orders are strictly forbidden. So, interesting statement. On one hand, he says, I can bring you no proof, no basis, no quote that says that a certain act is forbidden, but it's clear to me, since I've learned all the halachot and all the laws, that this is a disorder, that it becomes a disease. Again, remember what we said earlier, the way those things are labeled, they are a disease, pollution, contamination, non-Jewish trait, and they are forbidden without any source. Here he adds, in this context it should be noted that there is likewise no explicit halacha or saying in Hazal that refers to the grave isser of mixed dancing. Interesting. So it's not mentioned anywhere in the rabbinic literature. The only argument against it is, and he calls the Hafetz Haim that pashutu merov pshituto lo nitan lechodvo. It is so obvious that one does not have to write it. But that, with all due respect, if that is the case, then why does the Torah write lo tirtzah? You shall not kill, you shall not steal. Right? If those things are so simple and obvious, why are they written? So obviously the Torah does write things that are obvious. Still in the introduction, in page 11, he recommends teaching this book at a young age. Why? Since young girls do not yet have the desire for beautification that develops in the upper teen years, it will fall, teaching this book to them will fall on very fertile ground indeed, since at the time of learning, the girl has no reason to rebel or to justify her wrongdoings. The impression it will make will be deep and decisive. In other words, brainwashing. Start early, before a girl even understands who she is, what she is, and then indoctrinate her. And I must comment that last Shabbat, there were guests in my house, and they were sleeping over, and one of the girls came to show her pajama, but because the parents do not allow her to wear pants, she's maybe 5-6 years old. The parents do not allow her to wear pants, so she had to wear her skirt over her pants. But she was very proud of her pajamas, and she showed us the pajama a little bit without the skirt. And her father looked at her with such angry eyes without saying anything, and you could see how that girl cowered and hid, and it was really very, very painful. But there's nothing I could tell that person. Maybe I will in the future reach out to them somehow. They're guests of mine, but this is really how girls are being treated when they're being indoctrinated in such a way. And with all that, we'll see that throughout the book, they will tell them, this is not enough, you're not doing enough, you're not modest enough. This is really a brainwashing, but it's a brainwashing that also leads to a rift in the Jewish people. It's not just them. We cannot say, oh, they are very orthodox, they are very modest. Because when they feel like that, then the others, who are the others? The others are now considered not good enough, or polluted, or people that you don't want to be in touch with, and that causes rifts and animosity in the Jewish people. He then recommends to learn the book slowly. Why? Because throughout the book, many forms of immodesty of dress are deplored and criticized in no uncertain terms. If the reader reviews the shortcomings of a large number of items one after the other, she could harbor the feeling of being indoctrinated. So he knows very well, I'm indoctrinating you, so let's indoctrinate you slowly. It's amazing how there's no reluctance to actually speak about those things. On one hand, he says, indoctrinate at a young age, and then learn slowly, otherwise the indoctrination will not work. Okay, now we start the first chapter in the book. It's called Tznius, or Modesty, our badge of distinction. So the modesty is the just like the dress code for men, a black hat, a suit, white shirt, that is promoted as a way to distinguish yourself from the rest, other Jews and non-Jews. So also the modesty code for women. And here we read in page 18 the following: when a Bas Yisrael, a Jewish girl, dresses in a manner that is modest and graceful, the purity of her refined being, her good midas, character traits, and her yiras shamayim, her reverence of heaven, shine through. They give her the very special chen with which Benos Yisrael are blessed, as the rabbis say. Amar Rabbi Ishmael Benot Yisrael yafot hen. Rabbi Ishmael said Jewish girls are particularly good looking. But the way that the author presents it is a special chen, it's grace, it's a special character trait that has to do with you being Jewish. And the quote from Rabbi Ishmael is the first example of what we're going to see a lot during the book, those clipped citations, those clipped references to texts that are not fully presented here. What we read here, Amar Rabbi Ishmael, Benot Yisrael yafot hen, Jewish women are beautiful, as to say, because just the fact that they're Jewish makes them beautiful. So that's the inner grace or chen that he mentioned before. But let us look at the Gemara itself. As the source, it's in Nedarim Samech Vav Aleph, Nedarim, page 66, side A. This is the following: Maaseh be'achat shenadar mibat achoto hanaya. It was very common at the time for an uncle to marry his niece. If she was an orphan, he would take care of her. But apparently, she was not attractive in his eyes, so he made a vow that he will never derive any benefit from being with her. Nadar Hanaya. Rabbi Ishmael heard of the case, and he asked the women of his household to take care of this girl, and they beautified her, they took care of her. And then they brought the man, Amar lo Rabbi Ishmael b'ni mizon adarta, is this the woman that you vowed not to marry? Amar lo lav v'tira Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Ishmael says, your vow is null and void, and you can marry her. באותה שעה בחר רבי ישמעאל ואמר, בנות ישראל נאות הן, אלא שהעניות מנוולתן. So, first of all, the quote is incorrect. In the book it's yafot. Here it says naot. Naot is gracious, but what Rabbi Ishmael said, that they're not that they are beautiful because they're Jewish, but that he refers to that case. There are beautiful girls among our people, but those beautiful girls, because of the harsh conditions of life, don't look attractive. So here's, as I said, the first example of a misquote, deliberate clipping of a source from the Talmud and presenting in here. Then, in the very next paragraph, also on page 19, he says it's very difficult for the Bas Yisrael to find blouses and dresses that have a suitable style and color, that are not see-through, that are not tight-fitting, and that have kosher necklines, hemlines, etc. First of all, just like reading that, you can drive one crazy. That a woman cannot find something that is kosher. Now there are all these rules. They have to have a suitable style, color, not see-through, not tight-fitting, kosher necklines, hemlines. There's a whole encyclopedia here. But how do we manage to find those clothes anyway? He says we are, however, an am keshe'orif. We are a stubborn people. Nowhere in the Torah, nowhere in the Tanakh is the term keshe'orif mentioned in a positive way. But for the author, the fact that we are stubborn with this. So maybe he sees it as a negative way. Of course not. He's trying to use any source available to promote that agenda. We continue to look at the sources that he brings, and we are on page 20. He says this: there are three categories of dress that are not tzniusdik, three categories of clothes that are not modest. One is inadequate dress. What is inadequate dress? He says it is also it's forbidden because it can cause men to see parts of the female body that must be covered. This is in turn extremely detrimental to Kedushas Israel. It's detrimental, again, this negative word, to the holiness of the nation. Now, what is that inadequate dress? He explains: a non-kosher neckline, see-through garment, tight-fitting blouse, dress and skirt, hemline that is too high, sleeves that are too short, and the uncovered hair of a married woman, all belong to this category. How easy to pile everything under this category. I wrote a long article on hair covering, and we'll discuss it more in detail, following the psak of Rabbi Yosef Mesas, and before him, Maharam al-Ashkar, that say that if the norm, if all women in the general society do not see it covering the hair, or going with the loose hair or uncovered hair, do not consider it to be immodest, then that's it. That idea of covering the hair has to do with the consensus of society, and today it is not considered immodest. It was considered in the past, only in the time of the Talmud. In the time of the Torah, as we'll see later, the reference is not to loose or uncovered hair, but to undone hair, to unkempt hair. But what is his source? Where does he bring all these details? Neckline, hemline, see-through, tight-fitting, etc. He refers us to two sources in the Gemara, Bava Kama and Bava Batra. So let us go to those sources and see what is written there. So, in Masechet Bava Kama, page 48, side 1, the Gemara speaks about someone who enters the yard of another person without permission. And they speak of a woman who got there either to grind wheat or to bake. And when it speaks about baking, it says Lemeifa, Kevan de ba'ya itzni'uta marvata de hatzer mesalken nafshayu. Because baking requires privacy, the landlord, or the dwellers of that place are out. They leave the place, they give her privacy, and therefore she is the one who is in charge of the safety of everything within the yard. This is the source from Bava Kama. In Bava Batra, page 57 too, they speak about someone who has to go through a path where women do the laundry, right? So there are two household chores that women used to do: laundry and baking. That back in the day were very hard, very taxing physical works, and maybe a woman who would do that at that time would not want to be seen doing that, not because she's dressed immodestly, but because she doesn't want other people to see her. And even if it is a conscious of immodesty, it has nothing to do with the regular way of dress. Even within our modern day society, think about going into someone's house without knocking on the door. Maybe the person, the man or the woman in the house, doing the dishes, they have gloves on or they're wearing shorts and they don't want you to see them. It has nothing to do with modesty. And even if it had, it is a long way from speaking about seeing someone doing baking and laundry 2,000 years ago and maybe removing some of their clothes to hemline, neckline, and see-through clothes, etc. Then we go to another category that he calls ostentatious dress. But ostentatious dress attracts undue attention to the woman of the girl, and she should be dignified and gracious, but not dressed in a way that is eye-catching and causes men to look at her. And what is the source for that? What is the source to say that she cannot be dressed in beautiful clothes? And remember that the same verse that people use to say that the woman should dress modestly, the one in Tehillim 45, right? Mimishbetzot zav levusha. It speaks about the woman who is being brought to the king, the princess, it is misinterpreted as kol kavoda bat melech pnima, the glory of the woman is to be indoors. But it says that she's decked in gold, she wears beautiful embroidery. Think about Eshet Hail at the end of Mishlei. We speak that she wears silk and fine linen and argaman, which is crimson. Where is this idea from? Why are we ignoring the Tanakh that speaks so extensively about beauty and about how the garments and Shir Shirim in the Song of Songs and other places? The quote that he brings here is from Ketubot, page 72, side B, and it says, it's a practice for a woman to spin bright red thread in public because particles of the bright fiber fall on her face and forehead, and people will be attracted to look at her brightly colored face. So from that, he concludes that loud and ostentatious hairstyles are also forbidden. So one very vague reference in the Gemara becomes this source to say that ostentatious clothes are forbidden. And indeed, in the Orthodox society, some factions of the ultra-Orthodox society, a woman cannot wear red clothes or colorful clothes. To the extent that I was one day, just towards the end of the summer, in a school supply stores at in Borough Park, and a woman came in and picked up a red backpack, and then she asked the vendor, whether there were any rules that the school issued about red backpacks. I mean, even for kids, and even a backpack is now something that people are cautious about. It's crazy how this kind of brainwashing was able to influence the people. We should look really into the Gemara and Ketubot. We'll do it later when we talk about Kisui Rosh. But just a word about the Hebrew. The language in the Gemara there is Tova verad keneged paneha, right? Tova verad keneged paneha. She spins wool and it falls against her face. So this is clean language. It's a euphemism to the private parts, and it refers there specifically to prostitutes who used to do that to advertise their trade. This is explained by Rabbi Hanoch Cohen Ehrentreu in a book called Eyunim B'divrei Hazal U'Vilshonam. He explains that the whole issue of spinning wool was connected to mischievous behavior and a conniving behavior, and in that particular case of promiscuity. The commentators who are not aware of that try to understand what is the word verad, vav resh dalet, and explain it as vered, as rose. Tova vered keneged panea. Why would anyone say that someone is spinning a rose? And the word vered, rose, as a name for a color, doesn't appear anywhere in Talmudic literature. So it is not a correct interpretation of the text, and it is part of the pattern of piling up sources that are not really relevant. Then he mentions by passing, which is again something that is sort of a serious problem that we have to look into later. He says, look at the brachot, bring several cases, and then look at the Midrash Tanhuma Vaishlah on the pasuk Vatetze Dina. What is Vatetze Dina? What is this verse? Is when Yaakov came to Shechem, the Torah says that Dinah went out to look at the girls of Shechem, and then she was kidnapped and raped by Shechem ben Hamor, by Hamor ben Shechem. So the Midrash says there, and it is also mentioned in some of the commentaries, it says Vatetze Dinah Yatzanit Aita. She was a Yatzanit, she was one who goes out without necessity. Later on in modern Hebrew, the word Yatzanit became a synonym with prostitute. So they looked at this Midrash and look at Dinah as a promiscuous girl. And they say she learned her from her mother that when she exchanged the mandrakes with Rachel for a night with Yaakov, she came out of the tent towards him and she says, "Come to me because I've hired you with the mandrakes that I gave my sister." But the real problem here is beyond modesty, because this is not about modesty or modest dress, is that the Midrash and the commentators afterwards blame the victim for the crime. Dinah didn't do anything. She just went out innocently to meet the girls. She was kidnapped and raped, and now we say it's your fault. You shouldn't have been outside. This is terrible. Okay, but we'll go to the last category that he mentions here as 3 categories of dress that are not tzniusdik. And just to remind you, one is inadequate, the other one is ostentatious. It's like, how inadequate, how is it a category? Inadequate is whatever you, the author, decide is inadequate. Then ostentatious, again, very subjective. You will decide what is ostentatious, what is not. And we'll see that really the list of ostentatious for him is extremely extensive. And finally, he says casual improper dress. Casual improper dress says when writing about wearing tzniusdik clothes, the Mesilas Yesharim writes, "Lilvosh bgadim tznuim dehainu mechubadim ach lo mefuarim." So now he says the clothes that are not tzniusdik, that are not modest, is that casual clothes are improper. So jeans, etc. All these things are not accepted. They could be simple, they could be modest, they could cover whatever the author wants to cover, but it's not good enough. He says here, casual dress projects an undisciplined, wayward attitude to life, whilst modesty entails a style of life in which one is careful to fulfill halakha and avoid all forms of intermingling. Intermingling with whom? With the other. Not observant enough Jews, non-Jews, etc. So it's just interesting, again, to look at the source that the author quotes here. He quotes the Mesilat Yesharim in chapter 23, and he says, "Lilvosh bgadim tznuim da'inu mechubadim ach lo mefarim." One should wear modest garments, which should be dignified but not too ostentatious. So what Rabbeinu Yonah says in Mesilat Yesharim, Ramchal in Mesilat Yesharim, it says, "Livosh bgadim tznuim," wear dignified clothes. He's not even talking about women. He talks about men. Men, in general, he says, have to dress with dignified clothes and not too ostentatious. But that's another example of appropriating something that is not related at all, and using it here to convey that message of modesty. Now, as a conclusion of this category of casual improper dress, we read in page 22 the following: untidy long hair, garments made of heavyweight stonewashed denim, garments with exposed unsightly seams, blouse tails that hang out when it is obvious that this type of tail should not be left to hang out, long baggy sweaters, excessively long skirts, and hosiery that sags down because it is loose on the leg are all part of this classification, and there is a reference to that. See Ta'anit 13b, and what Ochot Tzadikim Sha'ar HaGava says about unrefined dress. So yes, let's see it. So the source in Ta'anit 13b. Remember that the author wanted to say that long untidy hair and clothes that are saggy or long are not appropriate, and he proves it by the Gemara in Ta'anit that says that one should not make herself look not good. The case here is totally unrelated. It says, "Ena bogeret rasha'a lenavel et atzma bimei evel avia." It speaks of a woman whose father passed away, and she is a girl of marriage age, and therefore she is not allowed, even if she wants, she's not allowed not to take care of herself. She has to put on makeup or do the normal grooming act that she does on a regular basis, so people will marry her. She is there for people to look at and marry. It's a different problem. We're not going to talk about it now, but it has nothing to do with what he calls casual dress. The proof not related to the text. Now, the source of that he quotes from Tzadikim is this. That's interesting. Just again, like I mentioned, he said, don't wear those heavyweight denim, those exposed seams or long tails. All these are part of fashion. People wear it because they are nice clothes. They're not looking at it to denigrate themselves. And the quote from Ochot Tzadikim is this: Shema Yomar Adam Hoil v'agava hi midah ra'a kol kach efrosh mimena beyoter. Since pride and arrogance is such a terrible negative character trait, I should go to the other extreme. So that person becomes such an extremist, a fanatic, a hermit, and he doesn't want to eat meat, he doesn't want to drink wine, he doesn't want to get married, he doesn't want to live in a nice place, and he doesn't want to wear nice clothes. Yeah, if you do that, you're a sinner. If you wear torn and dirty garments, what is the connection between this and the statement that the author made? Nothing. The Ochot Tzadikim, which is not a biblical source, as a Talmudic source, speaks about. It was written in the 15th century, whatever it was based on, but still, it speaks of the of arrogance and how negative it is, and warns people against becoming an extremist and going to the other side and wearing dirty, torn clothes, or looking like a homeless, in other words. And the author tries to prove from here that what he calls casual jeans, or who knows what other kind of garments are immodest. So that is again a proof that doesn't exist. There is still a lot of material that we have to cover in the book, and really, at one point I was thinking of writing a book to refute that book because it is so outrageous. The outrageous thing is, an unfortunate thing is, that is being studied in all Bet Yaakov around the country as an encyclopedia and a mandatory and binding book of halacha. It is brainwashing. It is a clear brainwashing, but also instills in people, those who follow it, fear, guilt, shame, and sort of animosity towards people who don't dress that way, who are being referred to here as polluted, contaminated, non-Jewish, immodest, promiscuous, etc. We'll continue reviewing the book. We'll take a couple more sessions, and I hope you will bear with me. And hopefully this is not just halakha, just to learn what is written, but halakha lema'aseh, also to really take up this cause and fight back when people say that this is modest or immodest. Ask teachers, educators, parents. Let people live. Let women and girls decide what they want to do, and you are not the ones to dictate it to them. Have a great day.